Hi, it's me, Brooks. Welcome to Heal This. I'm really excited to have Andre Schabelman on our show today and share with you his story about his journey of healing and also how he is now an author of a book that I'm really excited to share with you. So, hi, how are you? It's morning for us.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Morning. Yeah. Could you share with us a little bit about where you've been, how you got here?
Yeah, sure. Well, I started off being born in New Orleans, Louisiana. My parents are from Argentina. Like a lot of immigrant kids, I had a lot of pressure to succeed. And that eventually brought me to the good old, Harvard University for a master's degree. I was one of the first 30 Airbnb employees. I did a stint at Google and then also made it to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with another company that went public that I was working for, and reached the pinnacle of success and all the things that were expected of me, and checked all the boxes, and kind of realized that I wasn't fully fulfilled, and wasn't really doing things that I wanted to do to leave an impact in the world, and wasn't really living from my heart. And so that and some other personal trials basically led me down a path to really look inward, and to then eventually express creatively in the form of this book that's coming out, as well as other things that I do online that are interesting, at least to me.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's how this was born. I just decided I wanted to start having conversations. So I'm like, let's just talk about healing. So that works. So you've done some really big things, some things that most people would go, oh, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but at the end of it, or not the end of it, but coming to a conclusion, you were thinking, this is okay, great. I'm successful, but I'm lacking some things.
Yeah. I basically realized that um, in the absence of really knowing what I wanted for myself, it was easier for me to latch on to the expectations that were set out for me. And so, yeah, I did all these things that from the outside were impressive. And that was by design, because I wanted essentially to please my parents, and fulfill the expectations of the people that came before me, and all those things. But I never was really actually doing the thing for me.
Yeah.
And that kind of manifested itself in ways like where I was just not enjoying life. I wasn't treating others in the way that I wanted to be treating others. I wasn't taking care of myself and my body. It had sort of like these downstream effects that, and part of that was because I'd never cultivated a relationship with myself.
Yes. Absolutely. I always I see clients 3 times a week, 3 days a week, and through coaching, the number one thing that always comes back is that you are the point of origin.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you want to call in is going to start with self. But if you don't know who you are, if you are not loving yourself, then
Yeah.
you're going to keep calling in the same thing that you're confused about. Why does this keep showing up? Why is this here?
And I
Um,
think I think I was even in a more basic point than that, because I didn't really even know, and I still struggle to, although I'm certainly better than I used to be around feeling my feeling, like actually being able to name the feelings that I'm feeling.
for sure.
Um, so that was sort of probably the first step, was like kind of figuring out, oh, that's the imprint and the hue of overwhelm. That was one of the first ones I felt. Then I was like, oh, that's fear that's coming up. Oh, that's me
Yeah.
feeling vulnerable. Or, oh, there's anger. Anger, weird. I never thought I had anger, but that's there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so when I started to get more uh, emotional like tools essentially in the toolkit, then I could really start the process of like accepting and loving and doing that whole thing.
For sure. Yeah. So when we're talking about success, one of the things I was thinking about before
Mm.
we did our interview today is that success is in the eye of the beholder. What do you think about that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I think for far too many years, I had focused on the beholder being someone else other than me.
Hmm.
And now I get to be mostly the judge of what my success is. Of course, every once in a while, I still want the external validation, but it is not now the thing that motivates me day in and day out,
For sure.
because I'm in charge of what success means. And for me, it's like living and being as authentically as I can be, treating others as kindly as I possibly can, being present as often as I possibly can, not numbing my feelings, and trying to feel more and more alive in my day to day experience, and to also live from the place of my heart and not necessarily from the place of my fears. That to me would be a successful life, and that's from my perspective. Finally.
Yeah, I love that though. I mean, I think you're right. Um, Most of the time when people are stuck or blocked, it's because they're doing something that's not true to themselves. And so I think it took a lot of courage for you to stop and kind of look inward and ask really what was going on. I have all of this. I'm doing all of this. Why am I not feeling happy and fulfilled? So
Mm.
that's I
Yeah.
think that's a lot of people, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say that, yeah, it does take some courage, but I also think we underestimate the amount of energy that goes into keeping us from actually living our fullest self. Like, it takes energy to get out of that, but it also takes energy to stay in the world where you're not actually living the life according to your dreams. So it's like it's not that it's necessarily courageous, but there's a lot of energy that goes into keeping you numb and trying to keep you quote unquote comfortable when it's not even that
Mm-hmm.
comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I,
For
I
sure.
think that's a helpful thing for me to recognize, which is that, like, what seems as courageous and hard isn't as hard as probably what I was already doing to try to
Mm-hmm.
live a life that wasn't according to my heart.
Yep. I agree totally. And I think that if we really sat and thought about it, fear is just as powerful as love. Although I think love is way more powerful. That's why it
Hmm.
kind of, you know, but it is a very strong force and it has a hold of
Mm-hmm.
us sometimes and will keep us very stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of times people are really fearful of failing. So failure, so
Mm.
they won't even try. Um, so let's talk about failure for a little bit because I know sometimes people get stuck because they don't even want to try. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some sort of like cliches around failure that are out there, and some of them are true. I think for me, I think my sense is that um, I I certainly have goals, but sometimes I'm aware that my goals are temporary. Like, what I'm doing, whether it's successful or not successful, no matter what, even if it is or it isn't, it's going to open a door into some other expression or experience. And so
I
rather
agree.
than seeing anything that I'm doing in some sort of finite way where I can classify it as a binary of succeeding or failing, in the end, it actually, that concept doesn't really exist, because even if I were to succeed in that temporary expression, it's still going to open the door to something else. And so I don't even know if I would look at a momentary moment of quote unquote success and really like have it mean too much, because I just know that it's part of a larger process that then opens up a new understanding, a new awareness, a new way of being, a new expression, a new way of relating with others. And so it's like it's a longer, I guess, journey that is
Yes.
unfolding kind of thing. So I mean, that doesn't mean that I don't feel sad or alone or scared or um, whatever emotions come up when I do fail, because there's a little boy in me that still like wants the approval from his parents, and whenever I do fail, it brings me back to that place where I'm not getting that approval and that love,
Mm-hmm.
and so I do go into that moment of despair. But I can talk to myself and I can be like, hey, remember, this isn't the only thing that you're living for. This is not a life or death situation. And your love that you're receiving from others is not dependent on this
Good.
moment in time.
Good. I'm glad you brought that up.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because seeking approval is one thing, but feeling loved on a condition of meeting specific expectations or checking certain boxes is, for me, not, it's not love. And I feel like your parents love you. I know they do.
Yeah, they do. They do. And
But
honestly,
it's that thing that we put on ourselves, right? That we're,
yeah,
again, it goes through that eyes of the beholder thing where it's like, oh, I'm going to check off these boxes and then I'm going to get this reward of whatever it is, but that's really not fulfilling to me still. So I
yeah.
appreciate you
And,
sharing all
and,
of that.
and one thing about the parents that comment, which is interesting to me, is like, I think ultimately the job of a parent probably doesn't need to be more complicated than having them let you survive, having them
Yeah,
provide for your survival and for you to be independent. And
right.
love and unconditional love is a nice to have, all that stuff.
Sure.
But in the end, I think that my parents did everything in their power to allow me to be alive, give me opportunities to be independent. And in
For
that
sure.
case, my parents gave me some great gifts. And yeah, of course, we have these desires for our parents to be different, but ultimately, I think that's sort of like a maybe it has more to do with the societal expectation and some pressures than it really has to do with what the reality generally is on the ground. But I have a lot of love for my parents, and I've definitely been also used them in therapy, as objects for me to then understand parts of myself. But I think
For sure.
extending those things in therapy to then mean something extra on top of it about them is something I'm working on not doing as much.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, they're people, and we're all imperfect. And I was going to share something that I was thinking about as I was thinking about today. And I have 4 kids. 3 of them are
For
in their 20s.
wow.
So yeah, and they are all pursuing their own happiness and their own life and doing the older ones. The younger one is still in my household, so trying to support him in all the ways and give him opportunities to figure out what his gifts and skills are, so that he can continue to develop them and figure out, I don't like that, I do like this,
Mm-hmm.
those kinds of things. But one of the biggest successes I feel like I have in my life, and I'm very proud of, is that my 3 older children want to hang out with me. It's like they not only are they living their own lives and taking care of themselves, and I feel like they're on the journey of happiness. It's kind of it's a practice, right? We have to figure that part out. But they enjoy my company and I
Yeah.
enjoy their company. And
Yeah.
for me, that is a huge success, that not only did I go through the parenting of a small person and made an adult. When they turn 18, I'm always like, woohoo, I made an adult. And so, but then also they enjoy hanging out with me and coming back.
Yeah.
And so I feel like
Yeah,
that's a
that's
huge
cool.
success. And
Yeah.
and
And
go
I
ahead.
I I totally agree with that. My parents always like comment on how much they enjoy that. Like when I do come in town, I usually organize like a crawfish boil or a crawfish hangout in New Orleans, and they
Sweet.
show up and they're there with my friends. They're part of the hangout, and they really enjoy that. And I think it is sad actually that we live in a. I think more and more we live in a society that doesn't really appreciate the wisdom and the presence of people that have gone through it before us. So
For sure.
aside from not the validation, but the fact that your kids want to hang out is awesome. But the fact that you get to impart your knowledge and have it be valued is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just talking to someone, and they have it's like a long chain of events here that happen. But, the parent is 85, and, they're saying, well, let's say they're 70, predicting to live to 85, right? Because of their age and sex. And then it's like, how often do you see your parents? And they said once a year. And, oh, okay, so you're only going to see your parents 15 more times. And it was like, whoa, now that you said it like that, like,
Yeah.
anyway, that was just the thought I had about,
I thought about that too.
yeah, because every time my parents have passed away,
Mm.
so I had to work through a lot on my own journey on that,
Mm.
about the guilt of not seeing them enough, or and the grief, of course. But what are some of your, maybe, parts of your healing journey that you have now looked back and thought, wow, I'm so glad that I really had that happen to me, even though it was really difficult? It kind of made me look within myself to figure out what I need to do next.
Hmm. Man, I have such an obvious answer. I'm trying to think of another one because I always talk about it, but maybe I have to talk about it. Let me see if there's been so many that I feel like, um, mm, I'll talk about a different one because I was going to talk about,
Okay.
I have this one story that is very present that seems like it always comes up in conversation. It was one thing that happened 3 years ago where I was drugged and robbed in
Mhm.
Colombia. That was certainly part of the healing journey, but I think I want
Yes.
to go down a different story. And
Yes.
I think there was one time in a partnership that I was in where I wasn't so kind
Mm.
to her. And I think rather than go into my own shame cycle, she gave me a lot of grace and love in that moment. And there was something about that grace that made it possible for me to look at myself in a different way, because I had been using the whole shame thing and seeing myself like an awful, terrible person as the way that I would actually avoid responsibility for myself. And so
Mm.
there was something about that grace that really allowed me to then have grace with myself, which is then what allowed me to actually look at the ways in which I wanted to be different.
Yeah. Nice. I like it. And when you own your own stuff,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
shifts everything when you really look at yourself. Because, I mean, it's easy to point fingers, or it's easy, like you said, to go into that shame cycle and just kind of, drift away. But if you're able to kind of say, yeah, I really messed up, or I could have done better, it makes a
yeah.
huge difference.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like, but what was fascinating about that experience was there was still an understanding that I was showing up in the world in a way that wasn't really aligned with who I was meant to be in a way. Like, I, even though I hadn't been kind in that moment, there was something that was guiding me that was like, hey, this is not who you are. And this is not who you're like meant to be. So I already early on in this healing process had a relationship with what I now am calling, my higher self.
Yeah, I like
I
that
don't know
too.
where that came from.
Well, I mean, when we hear something outside of our own thoughts, it doesn't. This is what I've landed on. It doesn't always matter where it's
Yeah.
coming from, as long as it is leading you in a good way, right? Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if it's questionable, then we got to take a step back and
Right.
think about that. Um, but if it was giving you an opportunity to make a different choice, to then level up, and be the person that you came here to be, right? And you chose
Yeah.
this. So then, hey,
I think I I think all the healing experiences or experiences that have triggered healing in my life, so to speak, have um, ultimately been pushing me and guiding me and in some sort of inertia moving me towards more connection with other humans rather than um, you know separation from others and
yeah,
myself. And so oftentimes I feel like whatever it is that's guiding me and that I'm connected to, I see its um, I see its purpose and its value in this world, in relative to how it makes me want to come back into relationship with others, as opposed to have me to go in the corner and kind of like hide
Yeah.
and be alone, which is
Yeah.
probably what I would do if I wasn't doing the healing thing.
Yeah. We're not supposed to be isolated. We're not
Yeah,
supposed to do that. And that was actually the next thing I had on here was connection. I
nice.
think you could have all the money in the world, you could travel the world, you could have all of the things you ever wanted. And at the end of the day, if you really don't have a connection with someone or a group of people, a community, it's really just, kind of empty. So I feel like connection is huge,
Yeah.
and we're all here teaching each other. We show
Mm-hmm.
up in each other's lives, and then we're like, wow, this is really bothering me, and it's really not you, it's me. I got to figure out what
Mm-hmm.
this is about me, that this is stirring up something inside of me. So it's happening because we're interacting with each other. So
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and um, and I don't know if it's the other direction, but I also realize that when I bring into acceptance different parts of me that I have in the past kind of othered and thought of as being bad, or a part that I don't want to look at, or um, or a part that I disconnect from, and then I kind of bring that part into the fold as part of
mhm,
me and my
mhm,
fullness. It actually allows me. It doesn't just allow me. It 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 does make it so that when I relate to others, I also then have more compassion for them, and I
absolutely.
have a stronger desire to connect and to see them as also part of me.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, we're all connected, and
Yeah.
I love that there's more and more science that's coming out that's saying how connected we are. Um, uh, but yeah, I think that the more I have learned to have more patience with myself and love myself and take time to really look at those shadow parts, right? The things that are kind of tucked away in the corners that we don't really talk about. But the more I look at that, you're right. I can see that too in my own life, that clients will come in and I will have so much compassion for them. I would think, man, I thought I had it hard or difficult or whatever. And then I think, wow, and just holding space with a lot of love for them has taught me a lot about
Yeah.
life, period.
Right. Yeah.
So,
It goes both ways. Um, I think another thing that's helpful is like when I come in contact with someone who's, even when they're being mean to me or something,
mhm.
um, I just sort of see people now. Like I see you as a kid still. Like I know
Yeah.
you're in an adult form, and you told me you had 4 kids and you're obviously an adult, but in my mind you're still like I'm a child speaking to another child.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I totally understand. I'm kind of like, I know I really see you, and so I see all the parts, the weak parts and the strong parts,
Yeah.
and we're, I say it all the time, we're like a car battery. We have to run on the positive and negative, and
Mm-hmm.
if we don't acknowledge that it's there, then we're running at a lower capacity, and so we're
Mm.
doing ourselves a disservice. So just taking the time to say, oh yeah, that's there, where did it come from, you know
Mm-hmm.
and nurture it a little bit to heal, then you can really take off and see when it pops back up or mirrors in somebody else. Those are fun
Mm-hmm.
times.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to something yesterday, and I was really fascinated because for the longest time we thought that our DNA is like 80% of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And like totally is the rest, tells about our life. Like we're the victim here, I'm going to have heart disease, I'm going to have diabetes, all of that. Like that's just how it's going to be. But now we're figuring out that we can change all of that through our thoughts. What do you think
Right,
about that?
right. Epigenetics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have definitely I've dabbled in that Joe Dispenza world a good amount, which is sort
Yeah,
of, the our thoughts are essentially our reality, and the power of higher energetic emotions like love and gratitude and their capacity to literally change molecules within you and to create a present that is based on a future rather than a past that is firing off the same chemicals in your brain over and over again that are based on
mm-hmm.
fight or flight. So yeah, like I think we don't know how powerful our our capacity to step outside of the DNA blueprint that has been given to us is.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly have more power than
For sure.
our DNA or anything that is written in stone for
Mm-hmm.
us. I mean, we probably won't avoid death and taxes, but
Yeah, no, we're not there yet.
but we certainly have the. Is it Brene Brown? I always forget
Hmm.
who
Yes.
says, or it might not be Brene Brown, but whoever
Okay.
says it might be. We can do hard things,
I think it is her.
It
Yeah.
probably is.
Yeah.
Um,
She says a lot of fabulous
she
things.
says
So,
a lot of really incredible things, yes.
yeah.
But yeah, like we can do hard things, and the power of determination and consistency and the power of these higher elevated emotions, I think are really, really true. And we're just scratching the surface of being able to fully understand it.
Yeah. It's kind of exciting, I think.
Mm-hmm,
I get
mm-hmm.
excited about it because I'm all about, creating my own reality,
Yeah,
right? And I think we are all on this path at the beginning where we're kind of like going through the motions and you and I both have our own stories of how that ended up and then we go,
yeah.
okay, that was awful. Like I needed to change some of that stuff. I mean, I'm grateful for a lot of things, but there's some stuff that I was like, I can't do this again or anymore.
Mm,
So, um,
yeah.
what can this look like? What are the questions that you would ask yourself, or like if someone asked you, well, where do I start?
Um, this is tough because a lot of what I do is really about not wanting to be the person that tells people how to live their life. That's right. That's why I wrote the book in second person, and
Yeah.
I didn't give the main character like a real name or a gender for a large portion of the book because, I don't want to be someone that tells people how to, do their healing journey, how to start, because I feel like it's such an individual process. But my guess is that if someone's listening to your podcast, then they're already at the point where they're asking themselves a question, which I would imagine could be something like, um, what else is there? Or why am I still stuck? Or,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what is the question that is coming up for you as someone who's listening to this, but there's probably some direction that is more obvious to take. Usually for me, like curiosity is a great hint or something that makes me excited. I was
Mm-hmm.
excited once about taking acting classes. It just, I saw it, it kept coming in my world. And I started taking acting classes, and that was one of the most powerful things I ever did because the teacher that I ended up on, he he basically taught us how to allow for all the emotions that were coming in at the moment to be part of the character's expression, because that's what would make that character more compelling from an audience member. So I stopped labeling my emotions as being good or bad, and I just, like, acting helped me really do that. So I use that as an example for, like, that I literally saw a Jim Carrey movie, like a documentary on when it's the documentary is called Jim and Andy. It's about his
Uh-huh.
role as playing,
Yeah.
Andy Kaufman on Man on the Moon. I saw that movie and I said, I want to be like him, or I want to do that. And I
Sure.
took acting classes, but that came from a place of curiosity and excitement. And I think that's probably the thing that I would follow when starting a healing journey or continuing a healing journey. It's like, what's the thing that's like most alive inside of you? Or
Yes. I love that.
um, that's one thing. Like, what makes you curious? What makes you feel alive? And the other thing for me is like, what isn't flowing? Like,
Yeah.
I would do I love to dance, but I usually just like to dance by myself. I really
Yeah.
don't like dancing with other people that much. And so I mean that to me it shows up as a block to me. It's like, why
Mm.
doesn't my energy flow in dance when in the presence of someone else? Like I
Sure.
lock up. I'm like, oh, I always feel like they're trying to take away my expression. I go into these like places where I'm like, all of a sudden I go from a place of being totally in flow when I'm dancing by myself to like not being okay with dancing with someone else. And so that to me is like, oh, that's a place where I have a blind spot, or that's a place where I have a block. Maybe I'd like to kind of uncover what that block is and learn a little bit more, because I bet there's something on the other side of that that could be useful to me and healing. So that's kind of how I think about my own journey more than anything else.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's amazing because I can't tell you how many times people are like, I'm stuck and I don't know what it is and I don't know why. So that's a lot to uncover and work with. And also, all the answers are inside of you, right?
Yeah.
The coaches and therapists are just trying to, reflect and say, is this it? Is this it? Is this it? And so, yeah, what brings you joy? What are you excited about?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people they love to sing, but they won't sing in front of people. What is that about? And
Right.
so, just understanding that that's a block and why. I love that. That's a good one. So
Yeah, and I think like you know, uh, I think it can be fun. uh,
yeah, I
I,
think it should be fun,
right.
you
Yeah.
know.
Exactly. Like why wouldn't me taking uh, like a dance class be fun? Why do I have to be stuck in this idea that it's going to be awful? I'm going to
Mhm.
suck. I'm going to be terrible. No, no, no. Like this, at the end of a process that I'm going to go through, I'm likely going to be able to dance better, something that I love to do, and I'm going to
Right.
be able to dance more freely in the presence of others, which is probably 90% of the situations when I'm dancing. So might as
Sure.
well, like, go down a path that's going to make my life better, even if in the short term, like, there's some discomfort. Like, oh, here's another quote that I think I know who it comes from. It's
Yeah.
it's Marcus Aurelius, which is like,
Hmm.
what's in the way is the way.
Yeah, it
I
is.
like
That's a good one. It's a
I
good
like
one.
that one.
Yeah, for sure. If we're wondering what it is, it's just right there. And that's the thing. It's like so close we can't see it. We're kind of like looking around it and it's right in front of us a lot of
Right there.
times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um Also, when somebody is trying to do something new or they don't understand how they're not accomplishing something new, I always suggest trying something new. And I always give the example that when I was trying to do something new, I decided I was going to go ballroom dancing and rock climbing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that sounded crazy to me. I thought, well, I'm going to show up there by myself to go ballroom dancing, and then climbing was fun until it really hurts. And then it's not as fun anymore. But when you do new things, you're telling, your higher self, the universe, God, whatever you want to say, hey, I'm open to new things.
Yeah.
So send it my way.
Yeah. And
So,
I think like um the part of me that usually puts up a fight is saying um like something around the lines of, it feels like trying something is permanent to some part of me. And so
sure.
I'm constantly having a conversation with myself, which is, thanks to my therapist. Um, Usually this conversation goes something like, hey, it doesn't have to be a permanent decision. You can just try this, and if you don't like it over, give it a try. Do it 3 times. If you don't, 3 times isn't
Hmm.
going to be that much of a waste of your time, quote unquote, if that's what that part's worried about. It
Sure.
doesn't have to be permanent. You can always not do it, but like, why not see what happens?
Yeah. That's what I did. That's what I say, and that's what I did, and I think it worked because it's just like I'm not a ballroom dancer, and although I, although I appreciate it and I appreciate rock climbing, I figured out it wasn't for me. But it
Right.
was just the idea of trying something new, and like you said before, sometimes we do something different, new. We practice, we gain a new skill, and that just takes us on a totally different journey. And if it's flowing and it feels good, then why stop? What was wrong with it? Why, it's a success to me.
Right.
So,
And that brings me back to that point, which is like, sometimes the thing you do, you, as long as you're doing it, you don't know what door is going to open from doing that thing. Like, if you think that going to ballroom dancing is about ballroom dancing, you're kind of limiting yourself. Maybe, I remember I really, I tried to be a travel show host when I graduated from the fancy school, that doesn't need to go mentioned again.
yes.
And I tried to pursue my dreams, and I really didn't like believe in myself. And there was a lot of things that came up, but it was like in that attempt of doing
Mhm.
something that I loved that I met this woman named Venetia when I was taking a hosting class in Los Angeles, like a TV hosting class, and she ended up being one of the first 5 Airbnb employees. And when she moved to San Francisco, I was already there, and we
Right.
reconnected, and that's what got me on my journey to work at Airbnb, which for the most part was like a pretty incredible experience.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and Yeah, so I think like if I had just seen the travel show hosting within the as just travel show hosting, then yeah, maybe at that time I would have seen it as a failure, but
Mhm.
as a larger chunk of time, it was a success. And now I'm back to hosting, so
Yeah,
who
I
knows the
know.
length of period to judge it by?
Right. Well, this whole journey that we're on for life, it's, we say healing journey, but like whole life is healing journey.
Yeah,
But, there's specific ingredients I feel like that kind of super boost us and help us feel good. And one of them is, kind of being open to what's being presented, right?
yeah,
Just be open to being open, what's
yeah.
there. Also, believe that there's something out there for you. I think the belief part is like lacking a lot of times. Like,
Mm,
oh, that's never going to happen for me. Well, yeah, if you
mm,
don't believe it's not going to happen, of course it's not going to happen. And then
mm.
the expectations thing. Don't put expectations like we were just saying. If I would have just shown up and been like, well, I'm expecting to be here because, oh, maybe I'll meet someone, or, whatever the idea is, that's a lot of times what people are trying to do is they're going somewhere because they think it's going to happen, whatever it is, right? A job, a person, another opportunity, but maybe it's not, and maybe it's something totally different, and one of those things is going to really change your life in a way that you never thought. So yeah, being open, having no expectations about what that looks like, and believing that there's something else, something out there for
Mm-hmm.
you. So,
Yeah, what you say reminds me of like I think we live in a society that teaches us that in order to get to point B from point A, we have to move ourselves and our body to get to point B. And in reality, actually, maybe that's true. You can live a life going from point A to point B, from point B to point C,
mhm.
and you will have certain wins along your way that validate that what you're doing is correct. But the times that I've let go of what B is from the perspective of A, but maybe I move towards B, but I let go of B as like an expectation or as a finite end, I
Sure.
often end up on the other side of the alphabet in
Mm,
places I would have never imagined.
right.
And so like I think it's fine to have directionality, but to use the destination as such a fixed point in time or a fixed destination may actually limit our ability to end up in some unexpected and magical places, which make life even more
Yeah.
exciting and fun to live.
I agree. I totally agree. And so you've talked a lot about emotions. And
Uh-huh.
we have generations before us that, you know, suppressed emotions forever. Like there were no expressions of emotion. It
Uh-huh.
was just be quiet, don't stop crying, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so when I started this spot in my life where I'm, you know, trying to help people figure out their blocks and move forward, emotions come up all the time. That's basically what we're doing, is releasing trapped emotions, trapped trauma, old ways of thinking, old beliefs. And so it caused me to think, man, emotions are just so important, you know,
Hmm.
like, and that's why we've spent so much time suppressing them and blocking them. But what are your thoughts about, you know, how you feel about something versus what it looks like or what it could look like? You know, like, well, I don't know how it looks or how I get there. I know, but what does it feel like
Ah.
for you?
Uh-huh. Well, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. I'll I'll tell you what's coming up, which is that
Yeah.
um whether I'm feeling my emotions or not, the emotions are there.
Hmm.
Um and I can choose to live a life where I actively numb those that feedback loop,
Hmm.
and um I've done that a lot in my life, and ultimately that usually leads to me engaging in some type of a compulsive behavior or doing something that is not truly something that I'm like in control of, or not that I need to be in control of, but it feels like there's something that is happening underneath the surface that is driving action that I'm not completely aware of, and then it usually leads me down some dark paths because I'm those emotions have been bubbling inside in ways that aren't being released, and they have a way of bubbling up in kind of unhealthy
Hmm.
ways.
Right.
So the more that I've gotten in touch with um, the feeling of those emotions, which is, you know, 95% of that is in my body and how each emotion feels, and to like really honor the fact that the emotions are in the body. And I start to become aware of when my body is communicating to me that it has certain emotions and feelings that are coming up. So now, as I've gotten better at that process of listening to my body and what it's trying to tell me, I can recognize more and more emotions and allow for them um, to come up to the surface rather than pushing them down. And then the more that I do that, the more that I realize that all emotions, even the positive ones, whatever, or
Yep.
if that's what you want to label them as, they don't last that long. Like
Right.
if I let them, they kind of like, instead of boiling and bubbling underneath the surface and then wreaking havoc, they kind of just come to the surface. They express themselves. Sometimes I get sad, and sometimes I get angry, but they come up to the surface, and then once they come to the surface, they kind of go away, and they
Yeah.
change. They change, at least they transmute into something else,
That's right.
and that then becomes a more liberating and freeing experience because the thing that is now running the program isn't so hidden underneath the surface.
Hmm.
And that to me is like a great that's freedom. You know, if something isn't running the program underneath the surface that you're not aware of, then you truly are being more free.
Yeah. I'm with you. I like it. Yeah, for sure. Well, so what does success feel like then?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that sense of um truly living and breathing from the place of my truest expression and my heart, and not letting the fears be the guide, but letting possibility and hope be the guide. Um, Putting out expressions into the world that feel connected to my heart and my authenticity. Engaging with others with kindness, I think, is a big part of life, and a small portion of it probably is connected to knowing and feeling that I have some amount of impact in the world. But for the most part, success is really a matter of living every day from the place of my fullest expression possible.
That's awesome. That's really
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. And what other projects you're working on right now?
Well, the book comes out February 11th. Um, then I have a new podcast actually that I just released. So I'm 2 episodes that I've published on that one.
Sweet.
It's called Rebel, like Rebelle, and it's about
Okay.
really beautiful humans and just telling stories of um, everyday people who are living authentically, and in turn, as a result of that, are actually being quite rebellious or thinking outside the box because of
Yeah.
that. Um, so that's live. On my Instagram, I also do. Sometimes I get inspired and I do different comedic characters.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think there's all, and I still act whenever anyone decides not to reject me. It's
I like
mostly a
that.
lot of. I mostly do auditions. I get.
That's funny. Oh,
But every once in a while, someone will. I'll sneak in through the cracks, and someone will let me act in their
that's awesome.
film.
Yeah. You're doing it though.
I'm
You know,
doing it. Yeah.
you're living and you're just being yourself, and I love that.
Thanks. Trying to
Yeah.
be.
Well, well, good. Well, I hope that you will take some time and go check out Captain's Wanted, because I thought it was pretty good. I
Oh
liked it a
yeah.
lot. I love the perspective that you put on it.
Oh, thanks.
So yeah, and I want others to check it out. So, and what an accomplishment. I mean,
Thanks.
yeah, I that's why when you say all the things, you're, I did this and this, I really a lot of accomplishments.
A
And
lot of accomplishments.
yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
mean,
No.
yeah, it's awesome. And also, like, you're not done, and
No.
that's just recently I had set all these goals for myself. I decided I was going to do such and such, and then I got there and I had this vision where I was standing on top of a mountain, and at the top of the mountain I could see all the other mountains. And
Oh.
I thought it's funny because when we set a goal and we achieve it, it's just a moment of
Yeah.
enjoying it. And then for people who are like, okay, what's next? What's next? It's like, whoa, I got to come down off the mountain, and then I got to start the next one,
I
you
and I
know?
think I think the way to do it more sustainably is also to find a way to make sure that the path up is an enjoyable one, and the path
Yeah,
down too, probably.
for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm all about that. I mean,
Yeah.
I want to enjoy life. I don't want it to be a struggle. Even
Yeah.
in times when it is difficult, I'm thinking, okay, I'm very grateful. That's one of my other super boosters is gratitude. And so,
Mm-hmm.
but I was thinking when you were just saying that is like maybe like in a video game, if I could just jump from the top of one mountain to the next one and just keep going, that would be amazing. So maybe I'll try and figure that out.
Don't
So,
do acting, then.
oh, I don't know if I could do that.
Well, I will say it is a great, like, being rejected as much as
Yeah.
I have been rejected in acting has been an incredible gift, because at first it would take me a while to recover from the rejections,
Sure.
and now I'm like such a pro. Like, like it doesn't bother me as much, and that makes it easier for me to like step into taking quote
That's
unquote
funny.
risks, because now I don't even feel the risk of rejection.
Right. No, it's definitely something you can put on your resume. You're like, I can endure rejection
Yeah,
really well.
totally.
So, and the part of the acting, there's so many parts of us that I feel like we stuff. And so I love that you're expressing that through that. So that's awesome.
Thank
So
you.
Yeah. So I'll put everything in the notes so everyone can come check you out and all your
Thanks.
spots. And I really appreciate your time.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I'm excited to see what you have next. So
Thank you.
thank
I
you.
appreciate your time and thank you for having me on.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a good day. We'll talk
All
to you
right, you
soon.
too. Bye.
All right. Bye.